This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily Bloomberg iHeart podcast. And I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael, managing editor of crypto for Bloomberg News. It's Wednesday, October 26th. First, there were the miners. And now, in the aftermath of the Ethereum merge, there's a new class of blockchain participants in town. These are the builders. But what exactly do these builders do? And why are Ethereum critics so worried about them? For insights on these questions, we've got Bloomberg Crypto reporters Olga, Kharif, and David Pan. Olga, David, what a pleasure to have you both in the studio, in the case of David, and virtually in the studio, in the case of Olga. David, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is David Pan. I'm a crypto reporter at Bloomberg. I cover crypto mining.
Olga?
Hi, I'm Olga Kharif. I'm a crypto reporter here at Bloomberg. Cover all kinds of stuff, including happenings and upgrades on Ethereum. And it's great to be here.
Ethereum, I feel like we talk about that a lot because there's been a lot going on. One of the things that was going on was the merge. And it's so weird that so many thousands of people spent years like preparing for this thing, worrying about this thing, criticizing this thing, thinking this thing was never going to happen. And now we're like, yeah, it's totally happened. We've moved on. We're in the new era. As part of that new era, both of you have worked on various stories about, let's call it pre-merge and post-merge, where pre-merge, the most important players in a proof of work ecosystem are some folks called miners. In a post-merge ecosystem, you're starting to hear words like builders and, validators. And what I would love for you both to explain to our audiences is why these builders matter, what they do, and where they came from. And Olga, I'll start with you.
Sure. So before the merge, it was a fairly simple system. There were the miners, and that was pretty much it. The miners essentially organized the Ethereum blockchain. And then after the merge, what was changed was they got rid of the miners. They did this because the miners consumed a lot of energy. They were basically very powerful computers that were used to order transactions on the network. And instead of the miners, they now have three types of parties that essentially do the same job. There are validators, there are builders, and there are relays. And essentially the builders, they package transactions into blocks. They pass them on to relays, and the relays deliver the blocks to validators who order the blocks into the blockchain. So this is the new world order, if you will.
In this new world order, David, what are some of the things that folks are criticizing right now?
Yeah, one of the major things is the higher level of concentration compared to pre-merge era. Because before the merge, there are literally like hundreds of thousands of miners who are, validating the transaction data on the Ethereum network. But after the merge, we're seeing essentially centralized entities like Kim and other staking services providers, just a handful of them who are kind of responsible for providing the staking services and performing the same tasks that were, they used to be performed by the miners.
So if I were to phrase that a different way, the big criticism, if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, is that we went from this ecosystem in which lots of people or lots of computers were equally important in kind of performing these key tasks. But in this transition, it's a smaller number of important entities that are performing these key tasks. And as a result, folks are concerned about the risks of concentration and centralization, which are two words that people who are fans of crypto are allergic to. This is in contrast to like mining Bitcoin, because I feel like on our own stories, whenever we do a story about Bitcoin miners, it's always like these gigantic data centers lit in green and there's lots of computers in them and humming and noise. And then, you had the story about Ethereum miners and it was like, here are some people in their apartments and they have laptops. And so it seemed like it was possible for people who weren't large corporations to be Ethereum miners pre-merge. Is that correct?
Exactly.
And now post-merge, not only are those folks like out of a job, as it were, but they've been replaced by much bigger, spendier, centralized entities.
Yeah. One clear example that shows that there'll be a higher level of centralization after the merge is that the protocol requires at least 32 Ether to participate in the staking process.
Hello there, my name's Moses, and I'm one of the producers on the Bloomberg Crypto podcast. Before we carry on, I'm going to quickly break down some of the terms that we use on today's episode. Firstly, we have staking. Now, you can think of staking like a kind of crypto collateral, where you agree to lock up your crypto for a specific amount of time, allowing others to make transactions with your digital assets. And in return, you earn a reward or get paid a yield.
32 Ether or 3,200 Ether?
32 ETH.
Okay, great.
Ether, yep. And if I just may jump in, so it's possible for people to contribute less Ether and join a pool and become part of a validator pool. But so there are issues with concentration in Ethereum now in all three of this kind of new parts that have been created in the merge. So with validators, the problem is that, all these people who did not have 32 Ether, a lot of them joined Lido, which is a staking pool, which now controls about 30% of all staking power on Ethereum. Other people started staking through Coinbase, which now controls about another 13% of validator power on Ethereum. So together, these two entities add up to 43% of validator power on Ethereum. But experts that I talked to said that, it's enough for somebody to have about 33, 34% of validator power to actually start messing with the network. So allowing double spend and so forth. And of course, most people say, well, we don't expect something like this to happen with Coinbase. We don't expect this to happen with Lido. But looking at Lido, for instance, it is a network of a lot of different validators, but it's controlled by Lido through software, and Lido or somebody at Lido could potentially make decisions that maybe its community would not want made.
Coming up, more from Bloomberg reporters Olga Kharif and David Pan on how builders could shake up Ethereum's landscape. There are people who believe that the only way forward in constructing a blockchain is something that looks and sounds like Bitcoin and is built on proof of work. And there are folks who are like, absolutely not. Proof of stake is the way of the future. Where do y'all think the reality of the ecosystem is going? Like, are we going to see more people really looking at this proof of stake move and saying, like, yeah, I want to move forward here? Are we going to see people like really doubling down on proof of work because they're like, we're worried about these concentration risks? Yes, there's other risks associated with Bitcoin, but this seems like a better trade-off to us.
Well, it seems like in blockchain, there has always been a trade-off between, like, do you get more centralization or do you get more security? So it's and I think a lot of decentralization that people think exists in blockchain is actually a myth, because, for instance, people love this idea that everything on blockchain is run by smart contracts.
A smart contract. Now, a smart contract is code which lives on the blockchain that operates automatically when certain conditions are met.
There's no human involvement, it's all fair and square, nobody can interfere, etc., etc. But actually, it turns out that, for instance, on Ethereum, most smart contracts actually have a back door. It's called an admin key. And, certain people can go in and change sometimes everything about the smart contract, depending on how the keys have been set up. And I think this is true to a lot of other parts of the blockchain ecosystem, if you will. What people are finding out is that very often, to manage something well, you need a little bit more centralization. For instance, one problem with the DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, is that, they're very hard to manage. A group of people, random people from around the world, has a very hard time sometimes coming to a consensus and making decisions and proposing things. And so I think some amount of a move to more centralization sort of is probably a normal part of making things more manageable and making them work better.
Yeah, and you also hear this opposite argument from Bitcoin purists and maxis. They fully. Bitcoin network is arguably the most decentralized network, and it's really hard to control because it's literally, validated by miners, by computers, and it's hard. The immutability is really high for the Bitcoin network, but we also see the very serious issues in terms of scalability and also the network efficiency. So that's one of the reasons why it has been really hard and time consuming to develop any kind of commercially viable projects on Bitcoin in terms of like payment or even games or other things that could be developed on Ethereum.
I think the challenge is that, this is like arguing over whether cake is better than pie. It's pie, just for the record. But because folks who are on the Bitcoin side of the house will say like, well, actually, we don't want to be a layer for gaming, right? Like we're Bitcoin. We don't, you can take your NFTs and whatever it is that you're trying to do. Like that's not interesting to us. So it's almost as if the incentives, or another way of thinking about this is, it seems like as we get more and more specialized approaches to blockchains, what you're going to find is that there are going to be very few one size fits all applications. And that, this seems to be kind of forcing a lot more, if not necessarily sophistication, at least more nuance in terms of, I am trying to solve this specific kind of problem. For the kind of problem I'm trying to solve, yes, Bitcoin's going to work fine for me. Or actually, I'm going to need to do this with Ethereum, or I'm going to need to do this on some other blockchain.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly I completely agree with this. There are so many different blockchains with such different structures and some are supposed to be better for gaming. Others are supposed to be better for decentralized financial applications, and they each have vastly different designs in a lot of cases. And so that's a chance for people to pick kind of what they believe in and what they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and I would say like as we go into a more sophisticated stage of the blockchain industry, we're also seeing more niche pitches from individual different blockchain projects. Some of them may be targeting people who prioritize privacy. They're also like zero knowledge mechanism for certain blockchains.
And when we talk about zero knowledge, it's basically making it really hard for somebody to know who you are, which is, of course, an arms race between the feds and everyone else. Olga, David, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It was great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga, and thank you, David. You can find more of Olga and David's reporting on the Bloomberg Terminal, on Bloomberg.com, or on Twitter. Olga is at Olga Kharif. That's OLGAKHARIF. And David is at DavidPan_1. That's DAVIDPAN_ and then the number 1. On the next episode of Bloomberg Crypto, it used to be that if you were a crypto startup, you could raise money with pretty much nothing more than a website and a smile. Really? But as the crypto winter comes for basically everyone, fundraising is getting more challenging. So who's still in the game, and when is a down round not a down round? This is Bloomberg Crypto, a daily podcast from Bloomberg and iHeartRadio. For more shows from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Send us your comments, questions, or suggestions for the show to crypto@bloomberg.net, or find us on Twitter, we're @crypto. The supervising producer of Bloomberg Crypto is Vicky Vergolina. Our senior producer is Janet Babin. Our producers are Mohammed Farouk and Sharon Barrero. Our associate producers are Ty Butler and Moses Undum. Desta Wonderad is our engineer. Original music by Leo Sidran. I'm Stacey Marie Ishmael. We'll be back tomorrow.